Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Layers of Truth, True Crime Collective. This evening, we're going to be talking about the Zodiac Killer. So, if you are familiar with the Zodiac Killer, or even if you're not, you will learn some things. So, he was a killer back in the late 60s, I think 68 and 69. And, well, I'm going to let Mahfouz fill you in on the details. So, Mahfouz, take it away, brother.
So, the Zodiac Killer was an unidentified serial killer who murdered 5 known victims in the San Francisco, California area between December 1968 and October 1969. So, this specific serial killer case has been described as arguably the most famous unsolved murder case in American history, and it has become both a fixture of popular culture and a focus for efforts by amateur detectives. So, the Zodiac's known attacks took place in Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the city and county of San Francisco. He so his confirmed attacks are on 3 young couples and the lone male cab drivers. Of the 3 young couples and the lone male cab driver, only 2 of the victims survived. The Zodiac coined his name in a series of taunting messages that he mailed to regional newspapers, in which he threatened killing sprees and bombings if they were not printed. He also said that he was collecting his victims as slaves for the afterlife. He included 4 cryptograms or ciphers in his correspondence. 2 of those ciphers/cryptograms were solved in 1969 and 2020, respectively, and 2 remain unsolved. In 1974, the Zodiac claimed 37 victims in his last confirmed letter, although to this day only 5 confirmed. He only has 5 confirmed victims, and so the tally of 37 included victims in Southern California, such as Sherry Joe Bates, who was murdered in Riverside in 1966. But Sherry Joe Bates has never been confirmed to be tied to the Zodiac, and so the unusual nature of the case led to international interest that has been sustained throughout the years. So the San Francisco Police Department marked the case inactive in 2004, but reopened it prior to 2007. The case still remains open today, though, in most places, such as the California Department of Justice, the FBI, the city of Vallejo, as well as in Napa and Solano counties. And now, to get more into the to get more into the timeline of the attacks and the murders and the correspondence and all that stuff. So, investigators agree on 4 confirmed attacks by the Zodiac killer in California. 5 victims were killed during these attacks, and 2 survived. So, like in 19, so when he sent his last letter in the 1974, when he sent his last confirmed letter in 1974, he he claimed to have killed 37 people, but there are only 5 confirmed people he's killed, and then like there are 2 others he injured, but they survived. So anyway, so the first attack was on December 28, 1968. 17-year-old David Arthur Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen were shot and killed on December 20, 1968, on Lake Herman Road in Benicia. And then the second attack was it was they were shot. So okay, a couple were shot around midnight. So this would have been like between July 4 and July 5th, 1969, in the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. Their names were Michael Renault Maggio, who was 19, and Darlene Elizabeth Farron, who was 22. So Michael survived the attack, but Darlene was pronounced dead at Kaiser Foundation Hospital. So they were both found alive, but Darlene passed eventually, and Michael survived the attack. And he gave a description of the attacker later on. And then the third attack was 20-year-old Brian Calvin Hartnell and Cecilia Ann Shepard, who was 22, were stabbed on September 27, 1969, at Lake Berryessa in Napa County. So Brian Hartnell survived, but Cecilia Shepard died at Queen of the Valley Hospital as a result of her injuries on September 29. And then the fourth attack was Paul Lee Stein, who was a taxi cab driver. He was shot and killed on October 11th, 1969, in the Presidio Heights neighborhood of San Francisco. So from 1969 to 1974, the Zodiac mailed heavily misspelled letters and ciphers to law enforcement and media outlets. Some letters began with "This is the Zodiac speaking" and were signed with a symbol resembling the crosshairs of a gun sight. 4 of the mailings had a cryptogram enclosed. So, as I mentioned, two have been solved in 1969 and 2020, respectively. And um, the Zodiac's confirmed correspondence with the newsletters and stuff are as follows. So the first was sent on July 31st, 1969, to the San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco Examiner, and Vallejo Times. One third of the cipher enclosed with each letter. I am the killer of the two teenagers last Christmas. So that was him taking responsibility for his first attack when on the couple on the first couple when on July 31st, 1969, when and he was referring to um David Arthur Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Michael Majau, and Darlene Elizabeth Farron when he sent that. And then um his second correspondence, or like the second letter he sent, was on August 4th, 1969, and this is when he first referred to himself, saying that he's the Zodiac. And then October 13th, 1969 is when he this is when he was taking responsibility for the murder of the taxi cab driver Paul Stein, and he sent a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt to the press as well. And then on November 8th, 1969, he sent he was taunting the Chronicle, and he was saying, "I thought you would need a good laugh." And then on November 9th, 1969, he sent a bomb diagram, and he said, "I have killed 7 people." And then on December 20th, 1969, he it was the that was another piece of the taxi cab driver's shirt. And then April 20, so like 1969 is like his last known confirmed attack, but he sent a bunch more letters. So uh
Yeah, he loved to taunt the police saying, "You can't catch me," didn't he?
yeah, like he loved taunting the police and the newspapers, and he would threaten to kill, like if the papers refused to post his letters in code, then he would threaten to kill more people. And he was so threatening to kill children as they came off a school bus as well. So like
Yeah, he just liked to kill.
yeah, he was a nutcase, yeah. And yeah, so like I said, his last confirmed killing was in 1969, but he sent so he sent about 8 more letters after that. So April 28th, 1970. No, sorry. Yeah, April 20th, 1970, and then April 28th, 1970, June 26th, 1970, July 24th, 1970, July 26th, 1970, October 5th, 1970, October 27th, 1970, March 13th, 1971. And then all of those were like weeks or months apart. But then the last letter, which was sent, it was sent 3 years after the 1970. It was sent almost 3 years after the 1970, after the letter in March 1971. So the last letter was sent on January 29th, 1974, and he was giving a review of the movie called The Exorcist, and he was saying it was the best satirical comedy he ever saw. And so um now to go into more detail about the first attack. So the first murders retroactively attributed to the Zodiac were the shootings of high school students Betty Lou Jensen, who was 16, and David Arthur Faraday, who was 17, on December 20th, 1968. So David Faraday was a student at Vallejo High School, while Betty Lou Jensen was a student at Hogan High School. At 8:30 p.m., David Faraday picked up Betty Lou Jensen, and the couple visited one of Jensen's friends. Sometime after 9 p.m., they drove to the outskirts of Vallejo and parked at Lover's Lane on Lake Herman Road, just inside Benicia city limits. Between 10:15 to 10:30 p.m., a passing motorist noticed the couple parked on a gravel runoff near the gate to a water pumping station. They were spotted again at 11 p.m. Between 11:05 to 11:10 p.m., Faraday and Jensen were attacked. Police determined that their assailant parked his vehicle about 10 feet alongside the passenger side of Faraday's car. He fired several shots at Faraday's car as he walked around to the driver's side. None of the shots hit Faraday and Jensen. The couple scrambled to get out through the passenger door. Betty Lou Jensen succeeded. As Faraday was exiting, the killer shot him in the head with a 22 caliber rifle. The assailant chased Jensen as she fled, firing 6 shots at her back. Only one missed. Police theorized the whole attack took 2 to 3 minutes. At 11:10 p.m., a motorist spotted the couple's bodies and alerted police. Betty Lou Jensen was dead, but David Faraday was still breathing. He died at the hospital. There were no witnesses and no usable tire footprints. The only motive the police could deduce was a madman wanting to kill. Despite an intense investigation in the following months, no viable suspects emerged. The murders were extensively covered by the media. And now for the second attack in Blue Rock Springs. So 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 19-year-old Michael Majau were shot shortly after midnight on July 4th, 1969. Darlene Ferrin was popular in Vallejo due to her job at a local restaurant where she met Majau. On July 4, they went on a date despite the fact that Ferrin was married. After 11:30 p.m., Ferrin received a phone call at her house. She arrived at Majau's house around 11:50 p.m. Immediately after leaving Majau's house, the couple noticed they were being followed by a man in a light-colored car. Ferrin drove out of Vallejo in the direction of Lake Herman Road. Shortly before midnight, she turned her car into an empty parking lot at Blue Rock Springs Park. This was another lover's lane located just 2 miles from Lake Herman Road. Ferrin either parked or stalled 70 feet from the lot entrance. Another vehicle parked about 80 feet to their left. The driver turned his headlights off and sat motionless. Michael Majau asked who the driver was. Darlene Ferrin told him not to worry. The stranger abruptly tore away from the parked couple. 5 minutes later, the stranger returned, parked a few feet next to Majau's side of the car, and got out. He shone a flashlight into Ferrin's car as he approached. Assuming he was a police officer, the couple rolled down Majau's window. Without speaking, the stranger fired a 9mm pistol into the car. One bullet hit Majau in the right arm, and the other hit Ferrin in the neck. Majau tried to leave the car, but his door handle was missing or removed. The assailant returned to his car, opened the door, and did something Majau could not see. As Majau struggled to exit the vehicle, the stranger shot him and Ferrin 2 more times each. The killer hurried into his car and drove off. A golf course caretaker heard the shots around 12:10 a.m. The perpetrator left no clues that could be traced back to him. 3 teenagers drove into the parking lot, saw the wounded couple, and got help. Police arrived at 12:20 a.m. 12 minutes later, Ferrin was pronounced dead at the hospital. Majau survived and described the attacker as a heavy-set white man, around 5'8" tall. He estimated the assailant's weight as 195 to 200 pounds, with a large face and curly light brown hair. The killer wore dark clothes and no glasses. These details were not enough to develop a suspect. Moments after 12:40 a.m., the Vallejo Police Department received a phone call from a payphone 2 blocks from the headquarters. The man on the other end of the line said, "quote unquote, I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you'll find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." Serial killers, sorry. So yeah, this was the first, yeah. So that's the details behind the first Zodiac killer attack, or the second one, yeah. And then there is, and then there's also a theory that, there's also a theory around that Darlene Ferrin actually may have knew her killer and may have previously been in a relationship with him. So, and yeah, so many have speculated that Darlene Ferrin knew her killer, and so Majau.
So she thought she might have been in a relationship with the killer.
Yeah, so there's a theory going around. And yeah, so and so Michael Majau, the boy who she was with that day, who he gave conflicting accounts on whether Darlene Ferrin knew her killer. At the hospital, he stated he did not know the murderer. At another point, he said the assailant's name was Richard. Ferrin's sister claimed one of Darlene's boyfriends was named Richard. Linda, who was Darlene Ferris's sister, also reported receiving annual phone calls on the 4th of July from someone who identified himself as a Zodiac. In the Zodiac's later correspondence, he only ever refers to Ferrin as girl. So, yeah. Darlene Ferrin, she did know Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, who were previous victims of the Zodiac. She lived less than 2 blocks from Jensen and attended Hogan High School. She was also familiar with Lake Herman's road status as Lover's Lane. There is a picture of Ferrin and an unknown man who closely resembles a composite sketch of the Zodiac. In 2011 episode of America's Most Wanted, police stated that they believed the photo was taken in San Francisco in either 1966 or 1967. And so, yeah. And so August 1.
All of them were around the San Francisco area, right?
Yeah. And so August 1, 1969, the Vallejo Times, San Francisco Chronicle, and San Francisco Examiner all received letters written by someone taking credit for the attacks in Vallejo. The three letters were nearly identical and began, "I am the killer of the two teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl last 4th of July." And then the three letters were rifled with misspellings and presented the first definitive link between the two separate attacks in Vallejo. Enclosed in all three letters was a different cryptogram, and yeah, the writer claimed in the cipher as my identity. He demanded the codes be printed on each newspaper's front page. If they were not, he threatened to cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again until he ended up with a dozen people over the weekend. So yeah, the newspapers published them, and so um and, and so yeah, like basically um let's see. So um and then so on August 4, he sent another letter, and
Were
this
all the
message.
letters that you've mentioned, were they ciphers?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us
Uh,
more about the ciphers.
so like they're all just like a bunch of symbols and letters and like like I don't even know how they were decoded, to be honest. Like I'm not sure. Like it's not known how the people who were able to decode some of them decoded them, because like I like when I looked at them, like it just like looked like a bunch of mumbo jumbo to me. So yeah, like I yeah, but so one of the ciphers that was able to be deciphered was on August 4th, and yeah, so on August 4th, 19, yeah, sorry, on August 4th, 1969, and so it was deciphered as, quote unquote, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill. Something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all the slaves and all the people I have killed will become my slaves in the afterlife. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife." And like all this was said without commas, and there were a bunch of letters that were unspelled. So he spelled the word dangerous wrong. He spelled paradise wrong. He spelled slow wrong. He spelled stop wrong. He spelled collecting wrong. Like he spelled a bunch of words wrong. And then so Vallejo Police Department asked a psychiatrist at the California medical facility to analyze Zodiac's message. The doctor concluded the writer felt omnipotent based on his fantasy about collecting spiritual slaves. The analysis described the Zodiac as someone you would expect to be brooding and isolated. The psychiatrist speculated that yeah, that this guy was that the Zodiac was a loner, but that is honestly, yeah, like he probably was a loner, to be honest. Like this clearly wasn't someone who had much to do, so this is why he did stuff like this. But yeah, um and then um 4 o'clock. Then there's the Lake Berryessa murder at 4 o'clock p.m. on September 27th, 1969. The Pacific Union College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking at Lake Berryessa on a small island connected by a sand spit to Twin Oak Ridge. Sometime later, Shepard noticed the man watching them. When he emerged from behind a tree, he put on a black executioner's hood with clip-on sunglasses. He wore a bib with a white 3x3 symbol on it. He brandished a gun, which Hartnell believed was a 45 caliber rifle. The Zodiac said he escaped from jail after killing a guard and needed a car and money to travel to Mexico. Before tying up Shepard, the Zodiac made Shepard bind Hartnell with the pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline. He tightened Hartnell's bonds because Shepard's nostrils were too loose. Hartnell still believed they were being robbed when the Zodiac drew a knife and stabbed them. Hartnell suffered 6 wounds and Shepard 10. The Zodiac hiked 500 yards to Knoxville Road, leaving several footprints for investigators to study. The killer drew the Zodiac symbol on Hartnell's car door with a black felt tip pen and wrote beneath it, Vallejo, December 20th, 1968, July 4th, 1969, September 27th, 1969, 6:30 by knife. After hearing the victim's screams, a fisherman and his son saw help. Hartnell untied Shepard's rope with his teeth, and she freed him. 2 park rangers arrived and tended to the stricken couple until the ambulance arrived. Napa County deputies Dave Collins and Ray Landers responded to the report of the attack. Shepard was conscious and gave a detailed description of the attacker. She and Hartnell were taken to a hospital in Napa. Shepard lapsed into a coma during transport. She never regained consciousness and died 2 days later. Hartnell survived to recount his tale to the press. Earlier that day, a suspicious man had been seen around Lake Berryessa by several people. A dentist and his son saw a heavy-set man looking at them from a distance before he hurried off. Around 2:50 p.m., three women noticed a strange man as they stopped on their way to Lake Berryessa. After they had arrived to sunbathe, they noticed the man again. Since they had potentially seen the Zodiac without his hood, the woman worked with Napa Valley Register photographer Robert McKenzie to create a composite sketch using an identity kit. Police showed the image to other potential witnesses. The suspect was described as being roughly 6 foot tall and weighing 200 pounds, which matched the descriptions by Shepard and Hartnell. Grace Smith also drew a sketch of the Zodiac's costume after Hartnell described it to him. Napa County Detective Ken Narlow was assigned to the case from the outset and worked on solving the crime until his retirement in 1987. The Zodiac drove 27 miles down the crime scene to a car wash in downtown Napa. He used a payphone to call the Napa County Sheriff's Department at 7:40 p.m. He told the dispatcher that he wished to report a murder. He wished to report a double murder, and he confessed to the crime. He did not hang up the phone. A radio reporter named Pat Stanley found the phone off the hook a few minutes later. The payphone was located a few blocks from the sheriff's office. Detectives lifted a wet palm print from the phone, but never were able to match it to any suspects. And then the last confirmed Zodiac murder, which was in Presidio Heights. So yeah, the last confirmed Zodiac murder in Presidio Heights took place 2 weeks after the Lake Berryessa attacks. Around 9:40 p.m. on October 11 in downtown San Francisco, the Zodiac killer hailed a cab which was driven by a doctoral student named Paul Stein. The killer gave a destination in Presidio Heights. When the taxi arrived at Washington and Maple Streets, the killer asked to be driven around another block. At Washington and Cherry around 9:59 p.m., the Zodiac shot Stein in the head with a handgun and took his wallet and car keys. Three teenagers witnessed the crime from a house directly across the street from Stein's cab. The Zodiac's face was clearly visible by streetlight. The teenagers watched as the Zodiac wiped down the vehicle and rifled through Stein's clothes. He left behind 2 partial fingerprints from his right hand. While the Zodiac was tending to the cab, the kids called the San Francisco Police Department. They described the criminal as a husky white man in a dark or black jacket. The dispatcher mistakenly alerted San Francisco Police Department that the suspect was black. Just 2 minutes after the call to San Francisco Police Department, 2 nearby patrol officers responded to the radio dispatch.
Folks, can you talk a little bit slower, please?
Sorry, yeah. Just
Thanks.
2 minutes after the call to San Francisco Police Department, 2 nearby patrol officers responded to the radio dispatch. They encountered a white man in dark clothes walking north towards the Presidio Army base. They pulled alongside the man and asked if he had seen anything suspicious. The man confirmed he had seen someone waving a gun and heading east. The officers hurried away. The Zodiac later claimed he was the witness that spoke to the 2 officers. When police arrived at the scene, Stein was declared dead. San Francisco Police Department canvassed the area, including the Presidio. The Zodiac had probably fled the area in a car by then. Police assumed the murder was a result of the robbery. However, the Zodiac mailed a bloody piece of the Paul Stein shirt to the San Francisco Chronicle on October 13th. He enclosed it in a letter where he boasted about the murder and claimed to have clandestinely watched San Francisco Police Department to search for him. The Zodiac also threatened to shoot a tire on a school bus and kill children as they exited. The teenage witnesses helped a police artist make a composite sketch of the man they saw at Stein's cab. The 2 patrol officers who questioned the witness near the scene realized it may have been the Zodiac. They also helped develop a sketch of the suspect. So the teenage witnesses, the 3 teenagers who saw the taxi cab driver's killer, and the 2 patrol officers who questioned the person who they thought was a witness, the descriptions were very similar. So yeah, and so San Francisco Police Department detectives Bill Armstrong and Dave Toschi were assigned to the case. Dave Toschi ended up working on the case by himself and filled 8 filing cabinets with potential suspects. In 1976, he told the Associated Press that the Zodiac's letters were an ego game. He believed the killer lived in the San Francisco Bay Area and being a weekend killer. Why can't he get away Monday through Thursday? Does his job keep him close to home? Speculate he maybe has a menial job, is well thought of, and blends into the crowd. I think he's quite intelligent and better educated than someone who misspells words as frequently as he does in his letters. After working on the Zodiac case for 7 years, he started writing his anonymous letters praising his own investigative work to. So it seems that this police officer Toshi also had an ego as well, and so yeah. Now to get into now to get into the suspects. So the San Francisco Police Department had investigated an estimated 2,500 Zodiac killer suspects by 2009, a half dozen of whom are seen as credible. So Richard Granell, who runs the website Zodiac Ciphers, stated in 2022 that there are probably 50 or 100 suspects named each year. The only man ever named by the police as a suspect is Arthur Lee Allen, a former elementary school teacher and convicted sex offender who died in 1992. Allen denied being the Zodiac, but he had been interviewed by police from the early days of the original investigation and was the subject of several search warrants over a 20-year period. In 2007, Grace Smith noticed that several detectives described Allen as the most likely suspect. In 2010, Toshi stated that all evidence against Allen ultimately turned out to be negative. Other suspects seen as viable include Earl Van Best Jr., Gary Francis Poste, Giuseppe Boliviculia, Lawrence Kane, Paul Doer, Richard Gakowski, and Richard Marshall. And so, so Arthur Lee Allen, as I said, was like the only man ever named by the police as a suspect, and he was a former elementary school and a convicted sex offender, and he had been interviewed by police from the early days of the Zodiac investigation, and was the subject of several search warrants over a 20-year period. In the 2024 documentary called "This Is the Zodiac Speaking," allegations were made by a family who were friends of Arthur Lee Allen, which, if true, would reinforce his culpability. And this includes Allen admitting to being the Zodiac before his death in 1992. So he apparently admitted to it. So Arthur Lee Allen lived in Atascadero, California, before moving to the San Francisco Bay Area in June 1963. He enlisted in the United States Navy in 1951 and served until he was honorably discharged in 1959. During his time in the Navy, he served mostly in the reserves, but spent some time on active duty. He served on multiple submarines and earned the China Service Medal for his service in Southeast Asia. In 1958, he faced a special court-martial at Naval Station Treasure Island for bringing a loaded .45 caliber pistol onto a naval base. He was found not guilty. Allen lived in Vallejo, where he worked minutes away from the home of Zodiac victim Darlene Ferrin and from the scene of one of the killings. Jack Mullinax of the Vallejo Police Department wrote that Allen had been fired as an elementary school teacher after allegations of sexual misconduct with students in March 1968. Allen was generally well regarded by those who knew him, but was also described as fixated on young children and angry at women. Toshi's daughter stated that her father had always thought Allen was a Zodiac, but that police did not have the evidence to prove it. Actor Mark Ruffalo, who portrayed Toshi in the 2007 film about the Zodiac called The Zodiac Killer, commented, "If you get into who those cops were, you realize how they have to take their hunches, their personal beliefs out of it. Dave Toshi said to me, as soon as that guy walked in the door, I knew it was him. He was sure he had him, but never had a solid piece of evidence, so he had to keep investigating every other lead." On October 6, 1969, Allen was interviewed by Detective John Lynch of the Vallejo Police Department. Allen had been reported in the vicinity of the Lake Berryessa attack on September 27. He told Lynch that he had been scuba diving at Salt Point State Park that day. Grace Smith reports that a Vallejo police officer pulled Allen over for speeding and noticed a bloody knife in his car on the day of the attack. Allen dismissed it, saying, "I used that to kill a couple of chickens." In 1971, Allen's former friend, Donald Shenny, reported to Manhattan Beach that Allen had spoken of his desire to kill people, used the name Zodiac, and secured a flashlight to a firearm for visibility at night. Donald Shenny, Allen's former friend, said this conversation occurred no later than January 1, 1969. Arthur Lee Allen was interviewed again on August 4, 1971, this time by Detective Mullinax of the Vallejo Police Department and Inspectors Toshi and Bill Armstrong of San Francisco Police Department. In September 1972, the San Francisco Police Department obtained a search warrant for Allen's residence. In 1974, Allen was arrested for lewdness with a 9-year-old boy. After pleading guilty, he was sent to Atascadero State Hospital for pre-sentence evaluation and treatment. On May 13, 1977, Allen was given a suspended prison sentence and 5 years of felony probation. He completed probation successfully in 1982. Allen's arrest and sentencing could provide a potential reason why the Zodiac's communication stopped in 1974. The Vallejo Police Department served another search warrant at Allen's residence in February 1991. 2 days after his death in 1992, they served another warrant and seized property from his residence. On August 6, 1991, Michael Majau identified Allen from a photo lineup of 1968 driver's licenses of the man who shot him in 1969, saying, "That's him. That's the man who shot me." In contrast, police officer Don Falk, who, with officers possibly saw the Zodiac fleeing the taxi cab driver Paul Stein murder scene, said in the 2007 documentary that his which is called "His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen," that Allen weighed about 100 pounds more than the man Falk saw, and that Allen's face was too round. Allen and the Zodiac did, however, both wear shoes size 10.5. Nancy Slover, the police dispatcher who received the call from the Zodiac after the Majau Ferrin shooting, said in the documentary that Allen did not sound like the man with whom she spoke. Allen also owned and wore a Zodiac watch, a brand that uses a logo similar to the killer symbol. The letter sent to the Riverside Police Department from Sherry Joe Bates' killer was printed with either a Lee or Pika typeface on a Royal typewriter. During the 1991 search of Allen's residence, police seized the Royal typewriter with Elite type. Shortly before his death, Allen wrote a letter to Rita Williams, a reporter from San Francisco station KTVU who had just interviewed him. The letter contained grammatical mistakes similar to those of the Zodiac letters. Williams firmly believes that Allen was the Zodiac. Retired police handwriting expert Lloyd Cunningham, who worked on the Zodiac case for decades, stated in 2009, quote unquote, "They gave me banana boxes full of Allen's writing, and none of his writing even came close to the Zodiac. Nor did DNA extracted from the envelopes on the Zodiac letters come close to Arthur Lee Allen." So, yeah. And then in a 3-episode documentary called "This Is the Zodiac Speaking," which debuted on Netflix in 2024, Allen's former students in the film fondly recall his interest in cryptology. They remembered him playing records like Tom Dooley about a woman's murder and I've Got a Little List from the Mikado. He also brought dead animals into the classroom. Numerous allegations are also made by former acquaintances, members of the Seawater family, that greatly inculpate Allen. Zodiac researcher Michael Butterfield was skeptical of the documentary's allegations. In the 1960s, Allen was friends with Phyllis Seawater and often looked after her children. He took them on small trips, including one to Tajiguas Point in Santa Barbara County on June 3, 1963. The day before, an unsolved shooting had occurred at that beach. According to their account, after Allen and the Seawater children arrived at Tajiguas Point, Allen left them in the car and went down to the beach alone. When he returned about an hour later, he appeared to have blood on his hands. He cleaned up and sped away with the children. The next day, the bodies of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards were found on a nearby beach. And so, yeah, like, and then 3 years later, on October 28, 1966, Allen took 2 of the older Seawater children, Connie and David, to Riverside, California. They stayed in a motel, and David slept through most of the trip. Sherry Jo Bates was killed near Riverside Riverside City College on October 30. The following morning, Allen hurried the children out of the motel, and Connie recalls him molesting her in the car as they headed home. The Seawater children initially thought that it was ludicrous that Allen could be the Zodiac. In 1991, Connie directly asked Allen if he was. He said if he told her, he would have to kill her. In 1992, David thanked Allen for being so nice to them when they were young. Allen started sobbing and confessed to drugging them and molesting Connie. Alarmed, David asked Allen if he was a Zodiac, to which he allegedly responded, "It was me." The release of David Fincher's film about the Zodiac case in 2007 prodded the Seawater family to re-examine their memories of Allen. So, a possible Zodiac cipher from 1973 was decoded for a 2017 History Channel show. In the letter, Zodiac named his next victim as Connie Henley and her location in Albany, New York. Phyllis Seawater's maiden name was Hensley, and at the time the letter had been sent, Connie was living in New York State, just a few hours from Albany. Allen had previously fallen out with Connie for not leaving her family for him. The Seawaters also found a cache of Allen's letters to their mother, which include extensive discussions of the Zodiac. So yeah, so Connie, who he one of the children who he molested, like he previously fell out with her for not leaving her family for him. So yeah, he was clearly infatuated and obsessed with Connie, the one of the older children. And so and then yeah, so Arthur Lee Allen, as I said, is the most likely suspect in the Zodiac killer case. And like he's the only person who's been publicly named by law enforcement to this day as a suspect in the case, but there are a few other notable suspects. So as I mentioned, like from the 1960s to now, there have been 2,500 like suspects named over the years, and at least half a dozen, so at least 6 are were thought to be considered like viable suspects. And so the next
And
suspect.
it's possible, but the killer is still alive today.
No. So Arthur Lee Allen died in 1992.
I mean, the real killer, it's possible he's still alive today.
Yeah, because as I mentioned, so the Beverly Jarrett's case, which we covered 2 weeks ago, that like most of the suspects in that case are still alive, and that case is even older than the Zodiac killer case. Although granted, like the Zodiac killings were only 4 or 5 years after the Jarrett's murder, and the Zodiac killer, whoever it was, may have been way older than Beverly's killer was. So like that does it does give an element of doubt. Like the great majority of suspects that to my knowledge, if not all of them, are dead. So like in the Zodiac killing. So like Arthur Lee Allen, he's definitely had the most circumstantial evidence, the most coincidences pointing to him, and he died in 1992 and like when he got arrested for molesting the 9-year-old school student, and that was in 1974. That the letters coincidentally stopped after that year, so that is something that is notable to. Yeah, that is something of note. But yeah, um, and then and then the next suspect I'll talk about is Earl Van Best Jr. So in 2014, Gary Stewart and Susan Mustafa published a book called The Most Dangerous Animal of All: Searching for My Father and Finding the Zodiac Killer, in which Gary Stewart claimed his search for his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., led him to conclude Earl Van Best Jr. was the Zodiac. Gary Stewart based his theory on circumstantial evidence, including a composite sketch resembling Van Best, partial fingerprint and handwriting matches, encrypted messages and Zodiac letters, and partial DNA connections. So, honestly, like there isn't much said about there really isn't much said about Earl Van Best Jr. outside of like what Gary Stewart brought forward in his book about what I just mentioned. So, and then there's and then
Let me ask you a question, Mahfouz,
yeah.
before you go any further. Do you know where he got this crazy idea that the people he killed would be his slaves in paradise? Where did he get that?
So okay, Arthur Lee Allen is like the I think he was said to have been like if it was Arthur Lee Allen, I know Arthur Lee Allen he looked into a lot of like weird nutty like clearly whoever did this was very delusional, but Arthur Lee Allen, former students of his, came forward and said that he was like obsessed with like cryptology and like really weird theories and ideas about like about stuff like this, and like and he had like really weird religious and spiritual ideas. So if it was Arthur Lee Allen, I guess that would explain it. But regardless, whoever the Zodiac, like regardless of like the thing is like this was a serial killer, and like this was someone who like wanted to taunt people, so like the newspapers and and stuff like that. So like clearly this person was like a really bored individual who had nothing better to do with his life, and he honestly could have just been saying this for attention, but like obviously this person was not right in the head, so maybe he was just like super delusional and just got like
Yeah,
maybe there
for
was
sure.
maybe there was like there's no actual like maybe there's no actual like maybe the idea just randomly came into his head out of nowhere, like maybe he was just that delusional for some reason. But yeah, it was really nutty. But so on to the next suspect. So Gary Francis Poste, and this is the most recent suspect who's been added, I think. So in 2021, the Case Breakers, an independent group made up of around 40 former law enforcement officials, academics, journalists, and former military intelligence workers, claimed they had identified Gary Francis Poste, a man who died in 2018, as both the Zodiac and the murderer of Sherry Joe Bates. The FBI stated that the case remained open and there was no new information to report. So the FBI was refuting this claim by the group called the Case Breakers. And furthermore, local law enforcement, so the California law enforcement in Vallejo and San Francisco, they also expressed skepticism regarding the Case Breakers' findings. Riverside investigator Ryan Railsback said the Case Breakers' claims largely relied on circumstantial evidence. Rumors about Gary Francis Poste as a suspect had been investigated by the San Francisco Police Department in 2017, and they visited his jail but declined to say if they interviewed him. In 2023, the Case Breakers claimed an FBI whistleblower told them that the bureau had considered Poste a suspect since 2016. Poste was a veteran of the United States Air Force. He had a history of violence, so he pushed his wife into a wall, breaking her pelvis, and a male relative claimed Poste tried to attack him with a hammer. Poste allegedly had a group of young male followers who he trained to be killing machines and who often attacked animals. One piece of evidence used by the Case Breakers involved forehead scars that were supposedly present on both Poste and the Zodiac. Tom Voigt called the claims bullshit, noting that no witnesses in the case described the Zodiac as having forehead scars. The Case Breakers also said that the Zodiac and Poste had the same shoe size and claimed that DNA from the Bates murder would match Poste. Poste had been investigated as a suspect in the Zodiac case since at least 2014, and this was said by television news anchor Dale Julin. Julin filed affidavits in court that stated he interviewed Poste in 2017, and Poste admitted to being the Zodiac. The Union Democrat newspaper
found the information in the affidavits to be unverifiable. Julian also claimed he used supposed anagrams found in the Zodiac's letters to find a tree or post as the Zodiac hanged alleged victim Donna Lass. Julian saw for the codes contained post name and gave the coordinates of a specific pine tree in a section of a campground in Zephyr Cove, Nevada. The tree in question had been gouged at the base. The case breakers partially based their research on Julian's book on the subject, Catching Zodiac, which was released in 2024. And now here is the last suspect. So Lawrence Kane. So Lawrence Kane, also known as Lawrence K, is honestly probably the second most likely suspect after Arthur Lee Allen. And so the thing is, I've sometimes like the Zodiac killer. This was like my first real true crime obsession, and like outside of the Beverly Gerald's case, this is probably the case that I've been the most invested into in all my years of like looking into true crime. And so I always thought over the years that there possibly could have been two Zodiac killers, and if there are two, then I would have thought that the two were Arthur Lee Allen and Lawrence Cade at different times. Like my number one pick would be Arthur Lee Allen if there was only one, but I think it's more likely that there were two, and that Lawrence Kane was the second one. And so, in a photo lineup, a woman who was abducted in 1970 named Kathleen Johns identified Lawrence Kane, and then Darlene Farron's sister Linda identified a photo of Lawrence Kane as showing a man who had once harassed Darlene Farron in a restaurant. The officer Dan Falk said that Lawrence Kane resembled the man that he had observed near the taxi cab driver Paul Stein murder scene more than any other person. So like Falk is the one who said that Arthur Lee Allen did not match it, but he's saying that Lawrence Kane resembled the man he saw more than anyone else. And so Lawrence Kane had lived in South Lake Tahoe, California, and worked at the Sahara Tahoe Casino, where when alleged victim Donna Lass worked there. So Donna Lass was some girl who went missing in 1970 after the last confirmed Zodiac killer killed, and her body's never been found, but she's believed to have been dead. But so Lawrence Kane, he worked at the same casino where the alleged Zodiac victim Donna Lass worked there. And so Lawrence Kane had previously been arrested for voyeurism in 1961 and prowling in 1968, and had been diagnosed with impulse control disorder after suffering brain injuries in a 1962 accident. Lawrence Kane died in 2010. In 2021, Faye Calzeroui, a French-Moroccan business consultant and engineer, claimed that he had solved the Z13 and Z32 ciphers. According to Zeroui, the Z13 ciphers reads care, in theory a typo of K, and the Z32 cipher gives a set of coordinates. Labor Day find 45.069 north, 58.719 west. If the coordinate system is used based on the Earth's magnetic field and not the more familiar geographic coordinates, it gives the location of a school in the South Lake Tahoe, lining up with the cipher's intention of being the location of a bomb in school. Many Zodiac sleuths disputed Zeroui's findings, while the FBI and San Francisco Police Department declined to comment on the theory. Anonymous law enforcement officers investigating the Zodiac told the San Francisco Chronicle that they did not believe the solutions were correct. So that is like when it comes to the suspects, that is pretty much all. That's pretty much all there is to say for viable suspects, and I think that's honestly pretty much all I got to say on the case. Like, I know we usually talk for an hour, but I was able to get through this stuff relatively quickly, and we've been on for 43 minutes. So yeah, what are your thoughts on everything I've been telling you?
It's a very interesting case. Now, I think it is entirely possible, if none of these suspects that you mentioned that have died, it is possible he is still alive. I was alive when this case, when all these things happened. I was 14. I was 14 when this started. Now, it's possible he could have been just a little bit older than me, and maybe he still is alive today. He would be an old guy. If it is a guy, it could be a female. We don't know. And like you said, it could be more than one person involved. Whoever it was loved to kill, and he had this crazy idea in his head that he was going to go to paradise when he died, and all these people he killed was going to be his slaves.
Yeah, what a nut job.
Where this sick individual got all that, I don't know. But he was definitely one really sick character.
Yeah, no kidding. Like this person, like, like, I don't know if I'd prefer to believe that like this person was saying this as like more of like a cruel prank, or if he actually believed this, because like I don't know what's scarier, to be honest. Like, yeah, like clearly like regardless, this person was a nutcase. And okay, I will say like I'd have a very hard time thinking that the killer was female. I think like, so all the suspects ever have been male, and especially the two most promising ones were male, and the suspect descriptions, because like the thing is, like of the confirmed Zodiac attacks, the two suspects who survived, they gave descriptions of a male. So like in the Beverly Jares case, like we were talking about 2 weeks ago, I was telling you about like I was telling you about the female theory, and I do think a female definitely could have killed Beverly. Like, and I gave reasons as to why. Like, a female is honestly my top two suspects in the Beverly Jares case, but in this specific case, I can't see there being a female killer. But I do think that two killers is a big possibility. I think Arthur Lee Allen was so okay. If I had to have one, like if I had to. If the Zodiac killer was one person, and if I had to choose one person who it would be Arthur Lee Allen, especially like because the most coincidences pointed to him. Like there were just like way too many coincidences that pointed to him. There were like 25 different ones, and also he got arrested for child molestation of the 9-year-old boy who he taught, and that same year the Zodiac letters completely stopped, and then but yeah, like the thing is because Lawrence Kane, like he also did like he was said to have history with one of the first Zodiac victims, and then he also was closest to the description of the last confirmed Zodiac victim, so the taxi cab driver. So that's why I think that and he had like brain damage and like a bunch of problems as well, and like over the years, like descriptions have been given by like all the surviving members, and also like the police officers and the teenagers who saw the Zodiac killer, and like a lot of the descriptions have been similar, but some have been different, and some descriptions would look more like some descriptions would point more towards Arthur Lee Allen, while others would point more towards Lawrence Kane. So yeah, that's another reason why I think that two Zodiac killers operating around different or like I guess the confirmed kills were like 1 year apart. So but the letters did continue for years more. But yeah, I guess there were like two. Yeah, like my theory would honestly be two killers, but I'm almost positive Arthur Lee Allen was involved in this, whether there was one killer or two killers. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, it's interesting that he loved to taunt the police, and he obviously was smarter than them. He kept getting away with it, and he kept taunting them, sending them letters and those interesting ciphers. It took them years to figure those out.
Yeah.
So it was, that was impressive. I mean, the man was intelligent, even though he was delusional and nuttier than a fruitcake.
Yeah.
It is an interesting case, as they all are, So, yeah, I've enjoyed all the things that you brought out there, Mahfouz. I'm glad you done the investigating on this. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy no, I really enjoy all this stuff too. Like honestly, like and like I mentioned this to you as well. Looking back, I honestly wish we did the Beverly Jares episode this way, because we would have made it much shorter, and like we would have gotten to the good stuff right away. I'm not sure if you noticed, but it is our most viewed podcast episode but now by a significant amount. And it's been getting more and more views now. So like when you told me it hit 500, it was still around like the 420 mark for me, but on my on my end, like yesterday or like earlier today, I saw it was at 503 views. So like on your channel, it must be close to around 600 views by now. A lot of people have a lot of people have told me have reached out to me saying they appreciated the episode, but yeah, like it definitely would have helped if it was shorter. And I did mention to you that like I'm not sure if you remember one of the suspects from that case, the serial stabber who stabbed woman and who was just like a very bad person. Even though I don't think he did it, he was a very bad person. But I mentioned to you that a friend of mine who also has interest in this case, and he's also he's from the southern United States like you. He's from Kentucky, and he's also a pro wrestling fan like both of us. He also he believes it's this person who did it, and in the future he wants to come on a podcast episode and do kind of like an argumentative debate with me.
That would be interesting. I'd love to hear you argue with somebody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It'll be great for sure. And yeah, so I will. That'll be great for sure. And we can do like we can do like a part 2 in the future, which is like based off an argumentative standpoint. And I've also reached out to a bunch of different types of I'll tell you more about it later when we get off the podcast, but in order to get our podcast more viewers and more attention, I've reached out to more people, and I'll get into this with you later on when we are off air.
Very good. And folks, if you haven't caught the Beverly Zorro's episode yet, that's a good one. You might want to check that. It's still on our YouTube channel, so check that one out. And I think we've said all that needs to be said for tonight.
For sure.
And so I want to say good night to everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Layers of Truth, True Crime Collective. And join us again next week. We'll still be right here Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So have a great weekend. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. God bless. Good night.
Bye.